Hi all, I have another very exciting game to show you from the London Chess Classic. This was in round 7. Hikaru Nakamura was playing Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, MVL. We have a Sicilian defense. And remember, in an earlier round, Nakamura played the Sicilian Najdorf. In fact, he's playing against his own moves for quite a while. If you remember the Caruana game, which was fantastic, you need to check that out on the channel. It followed this exact same sequence. So he's on the white side now. So f4, h6. Technically, I mean, in live book, the move h6 here, traditionally the poison pawn variation has been played. Bishop e7, second most popular. Knight bd7, queen c7, and then h6 comes after that. In terms of popularity, about 543 games at the moment in live book. Okay, so bishop h4. We have queen b6 now, but in this position, white plays a3. So we've seen this trap in an earlier video. Queen takes, knight a4, traps the queen because we've got that b4 square. So here, bishop e7. We're still following Nakamura with the black pieces here. Bishop f2 pointing at the queen. Queen f3. Still following Nakamura with black at the moment. And it's g4 here. There's two main moves in this position, bishop b7 or g5. Nakamura had chosen g5 immediately, trying to gain access to this e5 square. Here, MVL plays bishop b7. We have now bishop g2, rook c8, and although this seems harmless enough because there's no c2 mate at the moment, right, because the knight's blocking, the mechanism of c2 as a disaster can be used if white's not careful. White plays, I believe, an important prophylaxis move here, king b1, because, I'll give you an example, rook he1 might be less accurate because of d5. Even though the black king's in the center, this would seem a very interesting move here. For example, here, knight e4. And all of a sudden, you can see c2 being a potential issue. I know it's protected by the knight on d4 at the moment, but this is looking a little bit dangerous, this position. It's actually slightly better for black, technically. Okay, I mean, the knight holds c2, but yeah, the pressure of the c2 threat to release the knight on d4 at least. So king b1 sort of reduces that potential danger. We have now g5, so positionally trying to get that e5 square. Castling would seem just asking for it here, by the way, with all these pawns just ready. It doesn't bear thinking about. Just to show you, though, I think it basically virtually loses. I mean, it looks as though this is just rolling black over h4. e5 here is white's going to have things like g5 coming up. So black's playing sort of positionally, trying to play this positional pawn sack. Now, very interesting move in this position to g5. You might think h4 would be good, but it seems that this move is very interesting. We have the move queen h3, which is trying to use that pin, that loose rook on h8. So this pawn's kind of pinned. So the threatening move f takes g5, for example. Now, I'll give you some examples. Black actually played knight c5, which seems totally logical from one perspective, hitting the center. If g takes, we can see the pin being used here, g5. And black's in trouble here because g6 will undermine the pawn chain here. For example, knight g8, g6, and this is horrible. This is just horrible. It doesn't bear thinking about black's getting torn to shreds. So, yeah, g takes runs into g5. And yeah, so we see in the game knight c5. Now, to hold e4 a bit more, we see the move rook h e1. So now f takes g5 is threatened again, holding the center first. Black plays a curious move here now, h5. Now the worst way for white to react to this would seem, I'll show you the worst way first, it would seem g takes, just allowing rook takes, would be this position. Yeah, because then there's like things like e5 there. This is horrible. Yeah, that rook's actually kind of useful on the h file. A less bad way is just taking here, but even then, black's not doing too badly. But white is okay, actually. It seems there are dangers on that f file. But Nakamura plays another way. This position, either not taking either pawn here. Can you guess what Nakamura plays? It's actually really fascinating tactically. If I give you 5 seconds, what would you play with white in this position? Okay, the move knight, not knight f3. The move knight f5 was played. Yeah, knight f5. It seems, I mean, thematically, a knight sack on d5 where f5 traditionally opens the e file here. Let's have a look here. What is actually going on though in this particular position? Black actually played knight c takes e4 here. Now, what if the knight sack is accepted? Okay, so say e takes. What is white actually threatening? Bishop takes c5 might be interesting. Let me just show you. Okay, in this position, why is this a threat? How can black go wrong? The analysis I have is starting with g takes f4. Actually, bishop takes, queen takes, and now there's a key idea here which creates another important pin. There's one pin here which is important, but actually there's another pin, more subtle maybe, which is important here for white to have a nice advantage. And also making use of this pin actually, but creating another pin, a third pin, is good for white here. Can you guess what white can play in this position, which helps justify the knight sack here? If I give you 5 seconds, what would you play with white here? Okay, bishop d4. Yeah, threatening bishop takes f6. And also it creates a pin on the knight against the rook. So if king f8, g5, this is good for white. Yeah, now that was okay. That was on g takes f4, which okay, it creates some mobility for the g pawn here as well, which makes that pin more effective. Now let me just show you some other possibilities while we're here. This is not the primary threat. I'm going to get rid of that arrow actually. In fact, bishop d4 might indeed be one of the primary threats, or bishop takes b7 first. So say, I'm going to give a token move just to see. Takes, mind you, this gets rid of the pin on bishop d4, but we can play here now. And we've still got this e-file. In fact, we can do this, bishop h4. It shows how dangerous the position is. If here... Yeah, this pin on e7 comes back to haunt. I mean, the king's in the centre, comes back to haunt black. It's so yeah, it's a really dangerous position after knight f5. We can see why. There's this pin here, there's a pin here, and there's also this third pin to make use of. So for the attacking player, this is maybe interesting to note. This kind of thematic sacrifice. Why you need 3 pins, a trio of pins, tri-pins. Okay, I'm playing on my name there, tri-pins here after knight f5. So anyway, black played knight c takes e4. we have now, I mean, this is a very interesting move. It gathers a lot of pawns because that's queen takes c2 check is behind the scenes here. Bishop takes e4, knight takes e4, but white doesn't want to allow queen takes c2 here, and also he plays actually bishop d4 now, bishop d4 in this position, hitting the rook. Rook g8, yeah, it's a very tactical position. Obviously, knight takes e7, king takes. Now just g takes h5. Yeah, the king's in the center. How dangerous is this? G takes f4 does open up this diagonal for the check, which is made use of. Now this position, queen takes f4 would seem to run into e5 here. White played king a1. Let me just check that for you. Actually, this might not even be the best move. H6 might be stronger just for h7 here. That's a big asset in the position, big dangerous pawn here. Yeah, just going like this. And even this move, it starts to look a bit ridiculous, but what is going on? Basically, queen h6 looks like a menace as well in this position, as well as knight f6. So, okay, so here, king a1 was played, funny enough, which means that this is not going to be a check on c2, putting the king a bit more secure. Black plays b4, and now white takes on e4. Black is collecting a lot of pawns here. It's not with check though. So there's a bishop for a few pawns basically here. B takes a3, queen takes f4, and white's king is getting exposed a bit. A takes, bishop takes. Now a very clever looking move is played in this position by black, to his credit, and quite often he's really crushed even Super GM opposition with the Sicilian defense. MVL is a very, very dangerous tactical player. Can you see the resource he used in this position? If I give you 5 seconds, black to play, very interesting tactical resource. Okay, rook g5, yeah, trying to drag the queen away from a4 as a kind of drag and drop tactic, but it's not compulsory to have this drag and drop. So if takes, we have this check and a repetition draw actually, but white can take on d6. I know this is looking really dangerous though. I know it's check, but it's looking really dangerous here for rook a5, but this threat is parried now. Can you see how white can simply parry this? Rook a5. 5 seconds. Try and keep tactical control here. Yep. Rook g1, just pin that rook. Now we have a check, and it seems as though, hold on a sec, hasn't white just gone into a perpetual check here? If he goes to b1, then queen c2, but there's another move that's legally available. Bishop a3, yeah, just blocking that check. We have now a very interesting position where some commentators have observed in this position black might have been able to play in such a way to try and get a perpetual check with a very cunning looking move. Black went down quite quickly from this position with the move rook takes g1. Now before going into that, let me show you this other thing, this little trick which was mentioned by some people analysing this game. King h7. The idea is this position, a different drag and drop to get the queen away from a3 in the form of rook d8. Yeah, so black prepared to sacrifice both rooks. Now if queen takes d8, then there's this perpetual here. You know, it's queen c3 carries on, but there's at least two ways for white to kind of deal with this position, a simple way would seem to be queen d3 check, because it holds a3. White has 2 rooks against the queen here, and that's technically very good for white. There's another way as well, which I'm using, if you check out with Stockfish 8 this game, you'll find, well, on my setup, queen d3. But there might be another way as well. Rook g7 check. King h6, because if taking, that's a forced mate. Check, holding a3 and then taking on d8, and there's no checks for black. So let's go with king h6, and in this position rook d4 becomes possible. So if queen takes, rook takes, yeah, white's better here as well, and maybe that's clearer because it's just like, although I'm not entirely sure. I prefer personally, it looks as though queen d3 check here is quite good. To play this position, let's just have an example continuation. What would white's plan be? There's going to be some play left in the position, but it's 2 rooks and the bishop. Okay, the advantage certainly is promising here. It's growing a bit. It's sometimes you get positions where the evaluation and check doesn't go up, but here it's growing. Check, rook d6. Black's got targets. You can give up that pawn, and then pick on black's targets. Maybe this pawn here as well is dangerous. This shows, for example, like this, black starts to fall to bits. I mean, it's 2 rooks and a bishop, so I think it is busted, the position, irrespective of king h7. But black quickly fell down after this, because after the check, it's running with checks. The attack here, king h7 is forced to carry on. If king here, we have just queen e5 check, and then mating on g7. So the only way to play on king h7, check. Now if king h8 in this position, actually this is worth pointing out because there's no check on d4 or c3, right? The bishop can't move, but white does have a forced mate in this position, trying to get access to the dark squares on the diagonal. Can you see what white can play? 5 seconds. The queen is on the light squares, so can't actually help the dark squares immediately in some cases. It seems queen f3. Now if queen d4 check, we simply have bishop b2 pinning the queen to the king. If f5, then queen e3 trying to grab this diagonal here from e5, and also there's queen h6. So that's hopeless for black. Black giving up the queen as token. So yeah, after the check, the king walks up the board, but there's a great move here that's played. So Nakamura doesn't miss chances now to put black away. It looks as though, with the bishop pinned, it's only the rook and queen here. Surely black's going to be okay, but there's a really accurate continuation played by Hikaru here. If I give you 5 seconds, white to play in this position, what would you play? Okay, he plays actually the stunning rook g6. So clearly, if takes, then we mate. The point is to clear away the pawn here. There may be a lesser mortal, a club player might just play another check here. Now let's just examine, is rook g6 entirely needed? If we played, say, another check, maybe the king just goes back here. No, it's still actually technically good for white with h6. But no, this is the crispest then. It's just rook g6 is the crispest way to actually give black the h-pawn, because now rook g1 threatens basically queen h3. White's got rid of his own pawn, which was defending the black king basically. So queen h3 is threatened. Actually, even better than queen h3 is not actually the major thing. Pardon me. Queen h7 check is the major thing. That's the threat of mate. Queen h3, there's always queen h4 to defend here. So queen h7 is the mate threat, which is parried with f5. Okay, so here, which check? I think I've given that away. If check here, this isn't played. Queen h4 is a bit longer than needed. Actually, in this position, queen f3 check is crisper. Now, if king h4, then we just play check and we mate on g5. Otherwise, if king h6, then we just play queen h3 and there's no queen h4 and we're mating. Yeah. So after queen f3, that was it. Let's just, yeah, that was the final move, I believe. So queen h3 check. Sorry, queen f3 check. A very, very tactical game, and at least these Super Gems are playing the Sicilian Najdorf, which maybe some people wanted from the World Championship match. But you see how dangerous. Let's run a few conclusions here. You can see how, yes, it creates imbalances, but I think the act of creating imbalances from the opening is an act of creating risk for yourself to lose. And it seems, against the Sicilian defence, these are very, very scary positions. Quite often for black's king safety. And it's also scary for white, of course. But with accurate preparation, you know, that knight f5. Once you see the ideas of knight f5 and the multiple pins, I mean, there's one guaranteed one with the king in the centre, right? The bishop pins. And there's another one on the loose, rook on the diagonal. But it seems more dangerous for black at this Super GM level to play in the Najdorf. But having said that, there was one year where Gelfand was beating up everyone with the black side of the Sicilian Najdorf. So, okay, maybe, this tournament doesn't, because of MVL's 2 losses with it, doesn't show a great advert. But I think the Sicilian still, in other years, has been a really good killer with the black pieces if black wants to try for a win. It's just a very, very tactical opening, double-edged. Okay, comments, questions, likes, appreciated. Thanks very much.